Chapter 1. I don't realize I have transmigrated into a dead Omega's body until the dying Alpha King grabs my wrist and asks which of his brothers sent me to finish the job. His grip is iron, not a sick man's grip, not even close. I am standing in a room that smells like stale medicine and expensive lies. The curtains are drawn so tight that the afternoon light doesn't stand a chance. My hands are trembling, not because I'm afraid of him, because 3 minutes ago I was in my apartment in Chicago, neck deep in a medical fraud case, half a cup of coffee getting cold on my desk. And now I'm here, sweating inside a body that is not mine, a body that is heavy and aching and somehow still standing, a body the size of a man who has carried too much weight in too many directions. Jasper Wren's body. His memories flood in before I can stop them, not in order, not cleanly. Flashes of hallways where people whispered too loud on purpose. A nursing shift where someone hid his paperwork so he'd look incompetent. The way the noble staff on this estate looked right through him like he was furniture with a scent problem. They called him the fat Omega nurse. They said it to his face. They said it behind his back. They said it with their eyes in every room he walked into. And they gave him the dying king, because they figured if Jasper Wren couldn't keep Damien Virell alive, well, nobody would blame the fat nurse for what God started. Hi, viewers. Have you ever been placed in a situation where everyone around you expected you to fail, and you had to decide right then and there whether to shrink or stand up? Drop your story in the comments. I want to read every single one. Back to this room. Damien Virell's hand is still locked around my wrist. His dark eyes are sharp, too sharp. Whatever is happening to this man's body has not yet reached his mind. That's the first thing I file away. He is not what they told me he was. The official record said neurological deterioration following a carriage accident 18 months ago. Muscle degradation, cognitive fog. A king reduced to a man waiting politely for his own end. The man holding my wrist looks like he is 10 seconds from snapping it. Which one? He says again. Not a question, a test. I make a choice in that moment, not as Jasper. Jasper would have stumbled over an apology. Jasper would have looked at the floor. I am not Jasper. I am Justin Hale, 41 years old, compliance auditor, the man hospitals paid to find what other people buried. Neither, I say. I'm the new nurse, and you have a broken IV line that's been dripping wrong for at least 6 hours. His grip loosens, just a fraction. I pull my arm back. Professional. Calm. I walk to the IV stand because I need him to watch my hands, not my face. I need him to see that I know what I'm looking at, because I do. Even in a body I've inhabited for less than 10 minutes, the clinical knowledge is there, woven into Jasper's muscle memory. And what I see on that IV stand makes my stomach drop. The drip rate is wrong. Not slightly wrong. Wrong in a way that required someone to calculate it. The medication combination listed on the chart next to this stand would, over time and at this rate, produce exactly the kind of neurological cloudiness and muscle weakness they are blaming on the accident. This is not negligence. This is a schedule. I set the drip rate back to something that will not slowly hollow this man out. I make a note of the original setting in my memory because I will need that number later. I will need every number, every chart, every face. I turn back to Damien. He is watching me the way a predator watches something it hasn't decided to trust yet. Good. That means he's still in there. Your evening medication, I say. What does it taste like? He blinks. Whatever he expected, it wasn't that. Bitter, he says. It shouldn't be. The silence that follows is the loudest thing in the room. Damien's jaw tightens. Something moves behind his eyes. Not fear. Calculation. He looks at the medication tray on his bedside table, the tray that arrived 20 minutes before I did. The tray that no one in this house thought a fat Omega nurse would think twice about. People call it fate when the paperwork is too boring to investigate. Well, I have never found paperwork boring in my life. And whatever is happening inside the Brenford Estate, whoever is running it, however long they have been running it, they just made the mistake of putting me in the one body that had an all-access pass to the dying king's room. I reach for the medication tray, and that's when I see it. A dosage, written in careful handwriting. A compound that has no business being anywhere near a patient with Damien's reported neurological history. Combined with what's already in that IV, it wouldn't kill him tonight. It would just make sure tomorrow was a little worse than today. Will you keep watching? Because we are just getting started. Drop a comment below and tell me, did you already suspect the brothers? Because I promise you, the worst is not in that IV line. The worst is wearing a smile and calling himself family. Chapter 2. The senior physician's name is Dr. Elliot Marsh. He finds me in the records corridor at 6 in the morning with the kind of quiet that only works when someone has been practicing it for years. He doesn't raise his voice. He doesn't reach for me. He simply positions himself between me and the door and says, in a tone made entirely of silk, "The king's condition is a matter for established staff." I don't answer. I am holding a chart I pulled from the secondary file rack, not the primary records, the secondary ones, the ones filed under administrative overflow, which is hospital language for the documents nobody wanted in the main system. I found them because I looked. I looked because the primary records were too clean. In my old life, a spotless file in a corruption case was never a good sign. Spotless meant someone had worked at it. Spotless meant every ugly number had been polished until it reflected something innocent. Jasper's memories gave me the layout of this estate. My own experience gave me the instinct. I had come in here knowing two things. One, that Damien's official treatment log showed a consistent medication schedule signed off by 3 different physicians. Two, that Damien's body was not responding the way a naturally recovering patient responds. The timing was too precise. The weakness came in waves that corresponded to treatment cycles, not to injury. That is not how damage from an accident behaves. That is how managed decline behaves. The secondary charts confirmed it. Not dramatically, quietly. A footnote here, a substituted compound there. A meal delivery time logged 40 minutes earlier than the attending nurse's notes recorded. 40 minutes. Long enough to tamper with what's on the tray before the food reaches the room. I look up at Dr. Marsh now. He is a tall man, thin in that particular way that suggests he has always been more comfortable with authority than with physical space. His coat is immaculate. His expression is the practiced kindness of someone who has been performing concern for so long, he has forgotten there's supposed to be something underneath it. I'm reviewing the chart, I say. That's my job. Jasper. He says the name the way a principal says a student's name right before the lecture begins. You were hired to provide daily comfort care, not to review complex treatment protocols. He had a medication interaction last night, I say. I corrected the drip rate. Something shifts in Dr. Marsh's expression. Barely. A fraction of pressure behind the eyes. That was logged incorrectly, he says. I reviewed it this morning. The original rate was intentional. intentional. He said it without hesitating, which means he is either very confident I am too scared to push back, or he is very bad at lying to someone who spent 15 years auditing professional liars. I close the chart. Slowly. I set it back on the rack in the exact position I found it. Understood, I say. I walk past him toward the hallway. He does not stop me. Why would he? I am the fat Omega nurse. I found a confusing chart and backed down. That is exactly what I was supposed to do. Sometimes people don't imprison the powerful with chains. They do it with paperwork, soft voices, and the word concern. In the 3 days since I arrived at Brenford Estate, I have mapped this place the way I used to map hospitals before a compliance audit. Not emotionally, structurally. I know where the delivery logs are kept. I know that Damien Virell signs off on the household budget every Tuesday, and that Virell schedules the physician rotation on alternating Fridays. I know that no servant makes eye contact when either brother's name comes up, not out of reverence, but out of the particular stillness that comes from knowing something you cannot afford to say. I have also been adjusting Damien's care in ways too small to raise flags. A different water source. A modified electrolyte mix I prepared myself. A change in the order of morning medications that quietly removes one compounding agent from his system before the next dose can build on it. And this morning, for the first time since I arrived, the tremor in Damien's left hand was gone. Not reduced, gone. He noticed. He looked at his own hand for a long moment with the expression of a man remembering something he was told to forget. He did not say anything. Neither did I. That is also information. I am almost to Damien's corridor when Dr. Marsh appears again, this time from a side door. This time the silk in his voice is thinner. Jasper, he says, I'll say this once and I'll say it clearly. If you want to survive this estate, stop improving him. He disappears back through the side door before I can answer. I stand in the corridor for exactly 4 seconds. Then I turn around and walk back to the records room. Because a threat is only useful if the person delivering it knows what you know. And Dr. Marsh just told me something he didn't mean to. He said, stop improving him. Not stop interfering with the treatment plan. Not respect the medical hierarchy. Not you're overstepping your scope of practice. He said, stop improving him. Which means he knows Damien is improving. Which means he's been watching. Which means the surveillance on this room is tighter than the official staff access list suggests. I pull out a small notebook I lifted from the supply room on day 1 and write one name at the top. Dr. Elliot Marsh. Not because he is the top of this, I don't think he is, but because every structure has a middle layer. The people who do the work that the architects don't want their hands on. And the middle layer always talks first when the walls start closing in. The real question is who signed his contract? Who put him in this house? Who has the kind of reach to coordinate a physician rotation, control meal delivery, and still stand in this corridor smiling? I know exactly who. I just need proof they can't make disappear. And the next time I walk into Damien's room, I am going to look at him differently. Not as a patient, as a partner. Because a man who can still terrify someone with a half-strength grip has more fight left in him than anyone in this house is ready for. The question is whether he'll trust me long enough to use it. Chapter 3. He catches me with my hand inside his medication cabinet at 11 o'clock at night, and the first thing he says is not a threat. He says, "How did you get the lock open?" I turn around. Damien is sitting upright in his bed, watching me with both arms folded and an expression that belongs on a man who runs a board meeting, not a man who is supposed to be too weak to lift a glass without shaking. I hold up the sealed vial in my hand. Steady. No apology. I used the secondary key, I say, the one taped under the third drawer of your nightstand, which tells me someone put it there so that someone other than you could access this cabinet without your knowledge. He looks at me for a long moment. And what are you planning to do with that? Have it tested, I say, independently, off estate. The silence that follows has weight to it. I use it to set the vial carefully into the small insulated case I have been carrying inside my nursing kit for 2 days. I close the kit. I look at him. He has not called for anyone. He has not raised his voice. He is watching me with the attention of a man who has been waiting for something and isn't sure if what just walked through the door is it. Then he says, very quietly, "Good. I wanted proof too." I don't let that land on my face. Inside, the part of me that spent 15 years working alone in rooms full of people who hoped I'd miss something feels something loosen, just slightly. I sit down in the chair beside the bed, not with permission, with intent. Tell me everything you remember from the first week after the accident, I say. And he does. What Damien Virell remembers is more organized than anyone in this house gave him credit for. He remembers the accident itself, a carriage wheel failure on a mountain road during a routine inspection tour. He remembers waking in the estate medical ward and feeling wrong in a way he couldn't name. Not simply weak. Off, like someone had adjusted something in him without telling him the settings. He remembers Caspian arriving that first night with a physician Damien had never approved. He remembers the physician speaking quietly to the head nurse outside his door for a long time while Damien pretended to sleep. He remembers a particular medication being introduced on day 3 with the explanation that it would manage inflammation. He also remembers that within 48 hours of that medication, he could not hold a pen. He had asked about it twice. Both times the answer came back routed through Rowe, who smiled and said the doctors recommended patience. Damien had pushed. The pushback was framed as cognitive instability, too much stress, too soon to challenge a treatment plan from his bed. That's how they do it. They don't argue with you. They reframe your argument as a symptom. Jasper's memories push in again while Damien talks. I don't fight them now. I let them come. Because in those buried flashes, I find something that makes my hands go still. Jasper knew. Not fully, not with the clinical language I have, but he had noticed. He had noticed the medication timing. He had noticed that Damien's worst episodes followed the nights Caspian came to the room alone. He had tried once, quietly, to flag it to the head nurse. The head nurse had reported it to Dr. Marsh, and the next morning, Jasper was moved from primary care to overflow duty. Overflow duty on a dying king, because they needed someone in that room who would follow orders and not ask the kind of questions a compliance auditor asks. They chose Jasper because they thought obedience was written into his bones, because they had mocked and minimized him so completely that they believed he had nothing left inside but the need to please the people who still looked at him. That anger is mine now. I don't let it into my voice, but I keep it. It is useful. Start eating only what I bring you, I tell Damien. Don't drink anything that comes with a tray. I'll handle your fluids from now on. He raises an eyebrow. You think they're coming through the food, too. I think they're thorough, I say. He looks at me for a long moment. Damien Virell does not give trust easily. I can feel that in the way he holds himself. He has been lied to in soft voices by people who called him sir. He has learned that courtesy is just cruelty in formal clothing. "You're not actually what Jasper was," he says. It is not a question. "No," I say, "I'm not." I don't explain more than that. Not yet. What I do instead is stand up, remove a small protein supplement from my kit, and mix it with water from the filtered flask I carry personally. I hand it to him. He looks at it. "Drink this," I say. "And if I don't trust you?" "Then your grip is going to keep weakening," I say. "And the next person they put in this room after me won't be bringing supplements." He drinks it. Over the next 2 hours, I teach Damien 3 exercises he can do lying down without anyone seeing the muscle activation. Small, hidden, the kind of physical therapy that looks like restlessness from the outside. He complains the entire time. Good. A man who complains is a man who hasn't given up. By the time I leave his room at 1 in the morning, something has shifted between us. Not warmth, not yet. Something harder and more useful than that. Respect. The kind that happens when 2 people figure out they are both more dangerous than the room expected. I am halfway down the corridor when I remember the thing I found in Jasper's personal nursing notes 3 days ago. The one folded and tucked inside the inner lining of the nursing kit. Not filed, not sent, hidden. 7 words. "The king is not safe when they come at night." Jasper saw it. Jasper tried. And then Jasper disappeared from primary care, and nobody asked why. I keep walking, but I am not walking away. I am walking toward the thing they spent months trying to bury. And I brought a full audit methodology with me. Chapter 4. The cameras in Damien's hall go dark at 10:53 every night. Not all of them, that would be obvious. Just the 2 that cover the East Corridor Junction and the medication cart storage bay. 19 minutes exactly. Long enough to move something. Too precise to be a malfunction. I time it 4 nights in a row to be sure. Same window, same 19 minutes, same 2 cameras. On the 5th night, I stand inside the camera shadow with a watch and wait. I hear footsteps at 10:56, soft-soled shoes, a single person moving fast and practiced. I do not follow them. Not yet. Following gets you caught and a warning in a corridor. Documentation gets you justice in a courtroom. I go back to Damien's room and sit in the chair that has quietly become mine. He is awake. He usually is now. We don't pretend otherwise. "The cameras run a dead window every night," I say. He does not look surprised. "I noticed the first month," he says. "I reported it to Caspian." Of course he did. What did Caspian say? He said the system was under maintenance. Then he had the maintenance team replaced. People don't always imprison the powerful with chains. Sometimes they do it with paperwork, soft voices, and the word maintenance. I pull a chair closer and set my notebook between us on the blanket. In the last 8 days, Damien and I have built something that has no clean name. It is not friendship. It is not the nurse-patient dynamic this house assigned us. It is closer to what happens when 2 people realize they are the only ones in a building who are telling the truth. He gives me names. I give him method. Tonight, he tells me about a man named Frederick Gale, a board member, mid-level, the kind of person who votes with whoever has the most recent threat hanging over him. 3 years ago, Damien had blocked a land acquisition Frederick wanted cleared. Frederick was not happy. Caspian had a meeting with Frederick 6 weeks after Damien's accident. Public record, logged as a condolence call. I write it down. "Access codes," I say, "for the secondary server room, the one off the East Library." He recites them from memory without blinking. I do not ask how he still knows them. I note that he does. That this man, dismissed as cognitively deteriorating, can pull 8-digit codes from 8 months ago without checking anything. He has been fighting back in the only way they left him, memorizing everything, waiting. I know how that feels. In my old life, I used to run audits on hospitals that had buried their own evidence. The most dangerous people in those investigations were not the ones who destroyed records. They were the ones who memorized what they couldn't keep. We work until 2 in the morning. By then, I have confirmed 3 patterns. The medication spikes follow a cycle that aligns directly with Caspian's private visits to the estate. Damien's inflammation markers, which I have been tracking through his physical responses, worsen 48 hours after those visits. The food compound issue is consistent and deliberate. It is not a kitchen error. Someone with medical knowledge is instructing it. That level of coordination requires at least 3 points of control: the physician, the kitchen, and the medication supply chain. Meaning, whoever is running this has enough authority inside this estate to give orders that don't get questioned. We are deep into the access logs when it happens. I am helping Damien sit upright for a shoulder mobility exercise, one hand on his back and one steadying his arm. He is stronger than he was a week ago. Quietly stronger. The kind of strength that comes back slowly when something that was actively suppressing it is removed. He shifts his weight to hold himself upright, and I feel the moment he stops relying on my support. Just a second. Then he lets himself lean back slightly. Not from weakness, from something else. I don't move my hand. He doesn't ask me to. It lasts maybe 4 seconds. Neither of us says anything. I am startled by it. Not because it's inappropriate, because Damien Virell does not relax. Not in this house. Not with anyone. And for 4 seconds he did. With me. I file that away separately from the evidence. I go back to the access logs. At 3 in the morning, I find it. Not a document, a cross-reference. The medication supply logs from month 7 of Damien's treatment show a substitution order, a standard compound swapped for an altered version. The substitution order carries 2 signatures. One is Dr. Marsh. The other is initialed only, R.V. Virell. Not Caspian. Roe. The quiet one. The one who smiles. The one who brought me a gift basket on my 3rd day here and asked how I was settling in, with the warmth of a man who genuinely hoped I was comfortable, right up until the moment he needed me gone. The cruelest people often divide labor. One wounds you openly. The other waits for you to thank him for the bandage. I close the log. I look at Damien. He is watching me. It's Roe, I say. He closes his eyes just for a moment. I know, he says. It was always Roe who planned things. Caspian just had the appetite for it. I stand up and reach for my kit. I pull out a small notebook page and I write a number on it. Then I fold it and hand it to Damien. That's the storage location of the backed up files, I say. Keep it. He takes it without looking at it. And if something happens to you, he says, then use them yourself. I am almost to the door when I remember the nursing note, the one in Jasper's handwriting. The 7 words I have been carrying since day 3. I set it on Damien's blanket without explanation. He reads it. The king is not safe when they come at night. He is quiet for a long time. He tried to tell someone, Damien says. Yes, I say. And they buried him in overflow duty. until the position opened up and they could replace him with someone easier. Damien looks at me then with something that is not pity and not gratitude, something more complicated than both. I leave before either of us says something we're not ready to say out loud. But I stop in the corridor and check my watch. 10:53. Right on schedule, 2 cameras go dark. And tonight, I am ready with a recording device positioned exactly where I need it. Chapter 5. Caspian. Virell calls me disgusting in front of 11 people and does not lower his voice once. It is the estate's monthly formal dinner, attendance required for all senior care staff. I have been here 19 days and I have not been to one of these before, because Jasper's placement on overflow duty meant he was always assigned to night monitoring during the dinner hour. But I am not on overflow duty anymore. Damien changed that 11 days ago with a single written directive. 1 line. Returned to primary care. Signed in his own hand. Caspian did not like that. He is standing at the head of the long dining table in a coat that probably costs more than this estate's quarterly medication budget. And he is looking at me the way people look at something that wandered into a space that was not made for it. "You know," he says, tilting his head like a man making an observation about the weather, "it is remarkable that my brother keeps a nurse of your particular presentation so close to his person." I sit down. I unfold my napkin. I place it on my lap. "Remarkable," he says again. Given that the Royal Medical Wing has always maintained a certain standard. Someone at the table laughs, quietly. The practiced laugh of a person who has learned to laugh when Caspian makes a sound that invites it. I pick up my water glass. "Your scent is rather overwhelming," Caspian says, directing the comment to the man next to him like a shared joke. "I imagine even the medicine smells different once it passes through certain hands." I take a drink of water. He wants me rattled. He wants me red in the face and stumbling over an apology. He wants me to confirm in front of 11 witnesses that I know I do not belong here, that I am the mistake the house tolerates out of the king's stubborn whim. I have been in rooms full of powerful people who needed me gone before. A compliance auditor is not a comfortable person to have in the building. I learned years ago that the loudest attack usually means the attacker doesn't know what you actually have on them. Caspian doesn't know what I have. So I let him talk. While he talks, I watch. I watch the physician 2 seats down who stops cutting his food whenever treatment logs are mentioned. I watch the estate financial manager at the far end who has been angled away from Roe all evening in a way that is too deliberate to be accidental. I watch Roe himself, seated across from me, smiling warmly and saying nothing at all. Roe is the more dangerous one. He has been sending me gifts every 3 days since I arrived. Small things. A better lamp for the nursing station. A warmer blanket request approved for Damien's room. Each one delivered with a soft explanation about wanting the king to be comfortable. Each one a probe. What can I get you? What do you need? What would make you easier to manage? Today, he sent a formal letter of appreciation to Jasper Wren, care of the estate, praising the dedication of junior staff. It was addressed to the name on my ID badge, the name nobody in this house thought twice about. The cruelest people often divide labor. One wounds you openly. The other waits for you to thank him for the bandage. Caspian finishes his attack on my body, my scent, and my class standing, and turns back to his soup. He is satisfied. He got the laugh. He performed the dominant alpha act of publicly ranking the omega in the room, and nobody pushed back. Across the table, Damien's hands are flat on the tablecloth. He is looking at me. I meet his eyes, just for a second. I give him the smallest shake of my head. Not yet. His jaw tightens. He picks up his fork. He does not say a word, and in this house, in this room, that restraint from Damien Virell costs him something I understand. A man who once commanded rooms by walking into them, sitting at this table performing weak and silent, while someone uses his name to mock the person trying to save his life. I know what that costs. I go back to watching the table. By the time the first course is cleared, I have 3 new names in my mental file. People who know. People who are scared. People who, under the right conditions, might decide survival requires them to say so. The dinner ends. I am the second to last person out of the room. The last is Roe. He falls into step beside me in the corridor. I hope Caspian wasn't too much tonight, he says, warm, concerned. The voice of a man who would very much like to be seen as different from his brother. Not at all, I say. He just says what he thinks, Roe says. So do I say. He smiles at that. He thinks it means I'm simple. We part ways at the corridor junction. I take the east turn, he takes the west. I wait 30 seconds. Then I take the east service stairs down 2 floors to the restricted archive wing, which I have been mapping for 11 days and accessing for the last 4 using a keycard override I built from the estate's own maintenance documentation. The archive room is cold and smells like old paper and institutional silence. I pull the 3rd lateral file, the one that corresponds to medical approval records for the 18 months prior to Damien's accident through the current date. I find it in 14 minutes. A signed approval record, not a routine substitution, not a physician's note. A formal treatment authorization document, dated 10 days after Damien's accident, signed by the estate medical director, and co-signed. One name. Neat handwriting. A man who has spent every evening of the last 3 weeks smiling at me across a dinner table and asking if there is anything he can do to make the king more comfortable. Roe Virell. His signature is on the document that authorized the treatment plan that has been hollowing his brother out for 18 months. I photograph it 3 times from different angles. I label each file. I back it up to 2 separate locations off estate using the encrypted access point I set up on day 7. Then I stand very still in this cold archive room and let myself feel it for exactly 10 seconds. Because after 10 seconds, I have to go back upstairs and walk past the room where Roe is likely having a nightcap and congratulating himself on his patience. And I have to smile at him tomorrow morning, and the morning after that, until the moment I don't have to anymore. A servant mentioned my name today in a conversation they didn't know Damien could hear. Something about what happens to staff after the next council dinner. Damien told me when I came in for evening rounds. His voice was very controlled when he said it. His hands were not. Someone in this house has decided I need to be removed before I become inconvenient. They are 10 days too late, but they don't know that yet. And now I have Roe's signature. I have the camera footage. I have the medication logs. I have the access records. All I need now is a room, a door, and the right moment to lock it. Chapter 6. The words written across my mirror are not in lipstick or chalk. They are in red grease pencil. Estate issue. The kind used to mark storage crates in the supply bay 2 floors below my room. Leave before you disappear too. I stand in the doorway of my room for exactly 6 seconds. My kit has been moved. My notebooks are gone from the second drawer. The false bottom I built into the nursing case on day 4 is still intact because whoever searched this room did not know what they were looking for. They were not looking for evidence. They were sending a message. There is a difference. Evidence hunting is patient. Message sending is scared. I change into fresh clothes. I wipe the mirror clean. I go to bed. Because the most dangerous thing I can do right now is let them see that it landed. I think about Damien while the estate settles into nighttime quiet around me. I think about what he said 2 hours ago when I came in for evening rounds. He had been calmer than usual. Not the practiced calm of a man performing patience. Something stiller, more internal. He had looked at his own hands resting on the blanket for a long moment and then said, without looking up, "What was it like before here?" I did not answer the version of that question he was actually asking. I told him about the audit work, the pattern recognition, the way corruption always left fingerprints on paperwork if you knew where to press. He listened without interrupting. That is not a small thing for Damien Virell. When I finished, he said, "In both lives, the most dangerous thing was not hatred." I waited. "It was being underestimated," he said, "until people stopped seeing you as fully human." I did not argue. Because he was right. And because I understood in that moment that Damien had felt it too. Not the way Jasper felt it, not through the particular cruelty of designation-based mockery, but through the inversion. He had been feared when powerful, then pitied when broken. And somehow, the pity was worse because it wore the same face as concern. The most dangerous rooms are the ones where everyone already knows the truth and still smiles. This estate is that room. I was almost out the door when he reached for the hair scissors on his nightstand and held them out without comment. The estate barber had not come in 11 days. I do not ask why. I take the scissors. I trim his hair in the lamplight. Carefully. His jaw stays set. His eyes stay forward. He is not comfortable with being cared for. That is clear in every line of him. But he does not pull away. When I find the cut on his right hand, dried and slightly infected from where he must have gripped something too hard in the night, I clean it without being asked. The antiseptic makes him inhale sharply. He does not make a sound. When I finish wrapping it, he leans back against the headboard and closes his eyes for a moment. Just a moment. And then his head tips very slightly toward my shoulder and stays there. 4 seconds. Maybe 5. Neither of us moves. Neither of us talks about it. I put the scissors away. I tell him his grip strength is up 12% from the previous week. He tells me that is the least romantic thing anyone has ever said to him in close proximity. I tell him I am not here to be romantic. He opens his eyes and looks at me and says nothing, which is somehow louder than anything he could have said. I am almost at the door when the estate notification system chimes, a formal board communication. Damien reads it from the wall panel. His face does not change, but his hand tightens slowly on the blanket. He turns and holds up the notification screen. A board vote. Formal notice. Permanent transfer of executive control to the interim co-directors of the Virell estate. Pending medical certification of incapacity. scheduled for 10 days from today. 10 days. I walk back to my wiped clean mirror and stand in front of it. My reflection stares back. The body that this house decided was unworthy of a second look. The body they put in a dying man's room because they expected it to watch and do nothing and eventually become a footnote. They gave me 10 days. That is 8 more than I need. I go to the nursing station. I pull out a fresh notebook from the false bottom of my kit. I write one line at the top of the first page. Day 23. The board vote is in 10 days. The mirror threat is confirmed. The search means they are nervous. Nervous people make mistakes. I underline the last sentence twice. Then I go to the supply corridor and check the recording device I positioned 3 nights ago. It is still running. The footage from the camera dead window is clean and clear. 19 minutes of a person in estate scrubs who moves through the medication storage bay like someone who has done it hundreds of times. The face is not visible, but the hands are. Thin hands. A particular ring on the left index finger. An estate signet ring that only 2 people in this building are authorized to wear. One is Damien. And Damien has not left his room in 11 days. I save the footage. I back it up. I write the timestamp in my notebook. And then I go back to my room and sleep 4 hours because I need to be sharp, and I cannot afford to run on adrenaline for 10 more days. Whatever is coming, I am not running from it. I am waiting for it to walk through a door I am already holding open. Damien sees the bruises before I say a word. He is sitting up in bed when I come in the next morning, and the moment I step through the door, his entire body goes still in the particular way of a man who has just registered a threat and is deciding how to respond to it. Who touched you? Not a question. The same register he used that first night when he grabbed my wrist. Low. Certain. The voice of a man who has not fully accepted that his authority over this building was taken from him. I set my kit down on the nursing station table. I'm fine. That is not what I asked. I do not answer immediately. I pull up his morning vitals chart instead and begin checking his blood pressure with the same hands that were grabbed last night in the supply corridor by 2 people in estate uniforms who held me against the wall for 45 seconds and said 3 sentences into my ear before walking away. The sentences were, "We know what you're collecting. Stop now and you leave with your health. Keep going and you leave in pieces." I had stood in that corridor after they left and counted my own heartbeats until they slowed. Then I had documented the incident. Time, location, physical description of both individuals, exact wording delivered. Then I had gone back to my room and slept. Because fear is information. And information is only useful when you file it correctly. Damien reaches out and takes my wrist, gently this time. He turns my arm so the bruising on the inside of my forearm is visible in the morning light. His jaw tightens. A muscle in his temple moves. "Damien, tell me who." "2 estate staff," I say. I don't have their names. I have their physical descriptions and the exact time of the incident, both of which are documented and backed up off estate. He lets go of my wrist. He does not look satisfied. He looks like a man who has spent 18 months being kept from the thing he is built to protect, and who has just been handed one more reason why the waiting is costing him something real. He reaches up. His hands are not fully steady. He cups my face with both of them, not rough, not possessive. like someone making sure a thing is still real. "Who hurt you?" he says, very quietly this time. And that is the thing that almost breaks me. Not the bruising, not the warning, not the 10-day countdown on the board vote, or the message on my mirror, or the 19-minute camera window I have been timing for 3 weeks. It is the fact that someone is angry on my behalf, not because I am useful, not because losing me would disrupt a plan, because Damien Virell, alpha king of a crumbling estate that has been systematically trying to kill him, is sitting here furious on behalf of a fat Omega nurse that this entire building decided did not matter. I take his hands and lower them. I hold them for a moment longer than is clinically necessary. Then I let go. "If you want to protect me," I say, "obey me for 1 more week." He searches my face. "1 week," he says. "7 days. Then you can do whatever you want." Something shifts in his expression. Not agreement exactly, a decision. The kind that comes when a person chooses to trust someone else's method over their own instinct, which, for Damien Virell, is probably the hardest thing I have asked him to do. "7 days," he says. I nod. I go back to his vitals. Over the next hour, I tell him the full shape of what I have: the medication logs, the co-signed treatment authorization, the camera footage with the ring, the archived substitution records, the board financial cross-reference linking Frederick Gale to Caspian's post-accident meeting, the backed-up files at 3 off-estate locations. Damien listens without interrupting. His breathing is steady. His eyes are tracking every detail the way they track everything now, fully, completely, without the fog that had been clouding them when I arrived. This is what competence looks like when you stop suppressing it. This is what happens when you remove the thing that was keeping a person smaller than they were built to be. When I finish, Damien is quiet for a long moment. Then he says, "There is one access route they haven't thought to lock. The medical emergency protocol allows the attending care nurse to activate estate-wide quarantine from the room panel without secondary authorization. It was written into the code after a contamination incident 3 years ago. Nobody has used it since." I look at him. "Does it lock the estate server room from external override?" I say. "For up to 72 hours, he says. I stand up. I walk to the room panel on the east wall. I look at the interface. The quarantine activation is exactly where Jasper's memory said it would be. A 4-digit code. Medical staff clearance only. I have had that clearance since day 1. I pull out my notebook. I write 4 words at the top of a fresh page. Day 24. It begins tonight. I walk back to Damien's bed. I look at him directly. "In 6 days," I say, "I am going to lock this door. When I do, I need you to be ready to stand." He does not flinch. "I've been ready," he says, "since the 2nd week." I believe him. I return to the wall panel and begin quietly rerouting the camera feeds, access protocols, and external log mirrors that I have been setting up for 8 days. Each one clicks into place like a key in a lock that was built for exactly this purpose. The brothers think they have 10 days to finish this. They have 6. And every door in this building is about to answer to me. At 6:14 in the morning on day 30, I enter the 4-digit code. The wall panel flashes once. A low tone moves through the building's ventilation system like a slow exhale. Then the locks engage. Every door in Damien's wing seals from the inside. The camera feeds reroute to the mirrored system I built over the past week. The external call logs begin copying in real time to all 3 off-estate backup locations. The estate wakes up and finds itself locked out of its own king. I stand at the window and listen to the building change. First, the confusion. Footsteps in corridors that stop at sealed doors. A radio call that gets no answer. Then a second one. Then the sound of someone trying a key card that used to work and no longer does. This is the part they did not plan for. They planned for a slow death. They planned for paperwork. They planned for an Omega nurse who would eventually be removed and replaced with someone quieter. They did not plan for a quarantine protocol signed by a medical clearance code they never thought to revoke, because they never thought Jasper Wren would know it existed. The contamination alert is plausible. I worded it carefully. A possible exposure in the medical wing, pending verification. All access suspended pending physician clearance. Physician clearance that routes through me. It will hold for a few hours before someone with enough authority demands a manual override. I only need a few hours. Damien is already sitting upright when I turn from the window. He is dressed. His posture is the straightest I have seen it since I arrived. The weeks of modified nutrition and careful physical rehabilitation have done what I needed them to do. He is not fully recovered, but he is present. He is awake. He is here. Cowards are boldest when they think the room is private. And the beautiful thing about a trap is that the person walking into it always believes they are the one in control. We work inside the sealed wing for 90 minutes. Damien reviews every document I lay in front of him. The treatment authorization with Rose's signature. The medication substitution records. The camera footage timestamp and the signet ring. The archived board communication linking Frederick Gale. The servant statements I collected over the past 2 weeks from 3 different staff members who chose survival over silence when they understood what was actually being asked of them. He does not look surprised by any of it. What he looks is tired. Not physically, the deep kind. The tiredness of a person who has known something was wrong for a long time and has been waiting for someone else to be willing to say it out loud. I should have pushed harder, he says. They would have institutionalized you, I say. That was the next step if you recovered enough to challenge them. He absorbs that. You knew that before I did, he says. I found the contingency document on day 17, I say. I did not tell you because I needed you focused on recovery, not rage. He looks at me for a long moment. Are you always this calculating? Yes, I say. He exhales slowly, not with frustration, something closer to relief, like he has finally found the one person in this building who does not soften the truth into a shape that is easier to swallow. Outside the sealed doors, the pressure is building. I can hear it. Voices have risen. Caspian's is the loudest. He is demanding access, demanding answers, using the word outrage 4 times in 90 seconds, which tells me he is rattled enough to stop managing his tone. Rattled people make operational mistakes. They reach for their phones. They send messages they should not send. They speak in hallways where audio does not cut out. The recording devices I placed in both East Corridor junctions 3 days ago are running. Rose's voice is quieter than his brother's. That is worse. Roe is thinking. Roe is calculating. Roe is trying to find the thread to pull. He will not find it. I cut every thread before I sealed the door. Damien reaches across the evidence layout and asks me very quietly, without looking up from the documents, when this ends, are you staying? I do not answer right away, because the honest answer is complicated. I am in a body that is not mine. I am in a world that runs by rules I learned from someone else's memories. And somewhere behind all of it is Justin Hale, who went to sleep over a medical fraud case in Chicago and woke up here, and who has not let himself ask what staying would even mean. Ask me again, I say, when the door opens. He nods. He goes back to the documents. At 8:47, the central building system receives an override attempt. Master clearance code, the kind that only a Virell family member can generate. I look at the panel display. The code belongs to Rowe. He is trying to unlock the door from the server room on the ground floor, which means he has left his position in the upper corridor, which means he is now exactly where I need him to be. Because the server room is wired into the live stream I activated 4 minutes ago. Everything Rowe says in that room for the next 60 minutes is going to the board, the PAC legal counsel, and the pre-alerted authorities who have been waiting since day 26 for exactly this kind of trigger. I look at Damien. They just walked into the second room, I say. He looks up. What was the first room? He says. This one, I say, 23 days ago. The moment I walked in and they thought they'd already won. Outside, the override attempt fails. Then a second one. Then silence. The particular silence of a man who has just realized that the system is no longer answering to him. And then footsteps, fast, coming toward the wing from both ends of the corridor. They are not knocking. They are coming through. I look at Damien one last time before it begins. Ready? I say. He straightens his spine all the way, without hesitation, without pain. Open the door, he says. Caspian. Virell comes through the door first. He does not knock. He does not announce himself. He simply arrives with the certainty of a man who has never in his life entered a room where he was not already in charge. He stops when he sees Damien sitting upright at the center of the room. Evidence spread across the bed. Every document clean. Every file labeled. Every piece in sequence. His face does not break immediately. I will give Caspian this. He is good at the first second. He controls it. He tilts his head slightly. He arranges his expression into something that resembles concern. Damien, he says, what is all of this? Not a question. Rowe enters behind him, quieter. His eyes move faster. He scans the room, the documents, the panel on the east wall, and finally me. He stops on me for a moment longer than his brother does. The cruelest people often divide labor. One makes noise, the other reads the room. Rowe is reading the room, and he does not like what he is seeing. Damien, Caspian says again, louder now, moving toward the bed. You need to rest. Whatever this nurse has been filling your head with, it ends today. We've arranged for Dr. Marsh to come in and assess your condition. Dr. Marsh, I say, resigned from estate employment 2 days ago. I have the notification on file if you'd like to see it. Caspian turns to look at me. The concern on his face does something complicated. You, he says, do not speak in this room. Actually, I say, I'm the only one in this room with medical clearance, which means I am the person who controls what happens in this wing for the duration of the quarantine. Per Estate Code 14-7, signed into protocol by your father before either of you was born. Caspian takes a step toward me. Damien says his name. With absolute authority. Just the one word, but it lands the way a fist lands. Caspian stops. Damien looks at his brother, fully, without the fog, without the resignation, with the eyes that were always too sharp for the story they were trying to tell about him. "Sit down," Damien says. Caspian does not sit down. He does something worse. He drops the performance. "You were supposed to be done by now," he says. Low, not to me, to Damien, the voice of a man speaking a truth he forgot to keep private. "You were supposed to be done months ago." The room goes very still. Rowe closes his eyes briefly. That is the mistake he could not stop his brother from making. I said nothing. I let the moment breathe. Because a confession pulled out of someone is evidence. A confession that falls out of someone on its own is irrefutable. Caspian hears what he just said a half-second after saying it. He tries to walk it back. He uses the word medical and the word instability and the phrase, "We were only trying to manage the situation." But Rowe is already moving to the panel on the east wall. "The stream," Rowe says very quietly to no one in particular. "Is it live?" I look at him. "Since 8:51 this morning," I say. Rowe looks at the panel, at the indicator light. Green, running, routing to the board, the PAC legal counsel, and the authorities who received my contact on day 26 and have been waiting on the other end of that connection. His face does not collapse. That is the difference between Rowe and Caspian. Caspian breaks loudly. Rowe simply goes very, very still. Then he says, and his voice is almost impressed, "An Omega nurse, with a nursing qualification, an off-estate evidence archive, a live stream, a quarantine protocol, 3 witness statements, a signed treatment authorization, medication substitution records, and a camera timestamp placing a Virell signet ring at the site of an unauthorized medication access," I say. Yes, Caspian turns on Damien, furious now, past the performance entirely. "You can't do this. The board has already been briefed. They will discredit everything as a stress-induced breakdown. You've been under strain. You've been unstable. The nurse has been manipulating you, and everyone in this building will say so." Damien stands up. Not theatrically, not with a speech. He simply rises from the bed. Not fully without effort, but fully and without help, and with every inch of the authority that was always his and that they spent 18 months trying to convince him he had lost. The room changes. Even Caspian feels it. Damien looks at his brothers, both of them. He takes his time. "The only reason you are still in this room," he says, "is because I wanted to look at you when it happened." Rowe reaches into his jacket, not slowly, not hesitantly, the movement of a man who has just calculated that the only remaining option is the one that makes the room too chaotic to be documented cleanly. He reaches for something inside the left panel of his coat. I am already moving, not toward Rowe, toward the panel. I hit the emergency lock confirmation at 9:22. The doors seal again, this time with an external alert attached. Every authority contact I preloaded receives the same notifications simultaneously. Breach attempt. Wing secure. Authorities confirm arrival. From outside, very clearly through the sealed walls of the Brenford Estate, police sirens reach us. Caspian straightens his jacket. His hands are shaking. He looks at Damien with an expression that is no longer anything recognizable. Not anger, not grief, not guilt. Just the blank look of a man who bet everything on a version of events that no longer exists. "The board will bury this," he says. "I already arranged it." He is smiling. He is still smiling, which means he has a card he hasn't played. And I need to find out what it is before those doors open. I planned for that, too. Caspian's smile is the kind that belongs on a man holding an insurance policy. And I recognize it because I have seen it before. In my old life, in hospitals where the administration had already pre-briefed the board before the audit team walked in. Where the records were clean and the witnesses were coached, and the structure was designed to absorb the truth and dissolve it. The board arrangement he is referring to is real. I found it on day 21, a pre-drafted resolution. Omega testimony given without alpha corroboration is not admissible in estate legal proceedings under the old PAC charter, a clause buried in administrative code from 40 years ago that nobody had thought to remove because nobody had thought they would ever need it. It was Caspian's backup, the insurance under the insurance. If the stream ran and the evidence surfaced and the authorities arrived, he would invoke the charter clause and argue that everything I collected was gathered by an uncorroborated Omega source with no standing to compel a board review. He expected me to be standing here with a stream and no voice. He did not expect what I had instead. The door opens at 9:31. Authorities enter first, then 3 board representatives who were not on Caspian's contact list because I had specifically reached them through Frederick Gale, who made a decision about his own survival 4 days ago and decided that honesty, presented correctly, was a better investment than loyalty to men who would discard him the moment he became inconvenient. Frederick Gale walks in behind the board. Caspian's smile disappears. Frederick is carrying a folder. Inside that folder is his own signed statement documenting the private meeting with Caspian 6 weeks after Damien's accident. The discussion of succession. The agreement regarding board positioning. The specific language used that, combined with the treatment authorization and the medication records, establishes a pattern of coordinated intent that no charter clause can reframe as uncorroborated. Because Frederick Gale is an alpha, and his testimony is on record. Caspian tries the Omega standing clause anyway. He says it loudly and with the confidence of a man who has prepared for this moment. One of the board representatives looks at him the way you look at someone who has brought a shield to a room where the fight already ended. Damien speaks before anyone else can respond. He speaks clearly. He speaks without notes. He speaks in front of every person in that room, authorities and board and witness and brother. And what he says is not a speech. It is a statement of fact. He says that Jasper Wren, currently serving as his primary nurse under estate employment, is the reason he is standing. He says this without hedging. He says that the evidence collected by this individual is complete, cross-referenced, and independently verified. He says that any attempt to invoke the charter clause against an uncorroborated Omega source is irrelevant because the Omega source is not the sole witness. The Omega source built a case. Dignity, he says, is not a designation, and competence does not require anyone's permission. The room is quiet after that. Rowe is taken first. He does not resist. He goes with the particular composure of a man who knew, somewhere, that this moment was always possible. He looks at me once before they reach the door. I look back. I do not look away first. Caspian argues for 6 more minutes. Technical language, charter procedure. His voice climbs and then breaks and then climbs again. Nobody is listening the way he wants them to. The sound of it is the sound of a structure collapsing from the inside. Then he is gone too. The room empties slowly. Board members speaking quietly to each other, authorities processing documentation, Frederick Gale speaking to the legal counsel in the corner with the carefully humble expression of a man who has just chosen the right side at the last possible moment. And then it is just the two of us, Damien and me, standing in the room where, 30 days ago, a man grabbed my wrist and asked which of his brothers had sent me to finish the job. He sits back down on the edge of the bed, not because he has to, because the adrenaline is leaving and the weight of the last 30 days is settling in behind it. His shoulders drop slightly. He looks at his hands. "You never answered me," he says. I know which question he means. "When this ends," he said, "are you staying?" I sit down in the chair beside him, the chair that has been mine for a month. I look at this room, the documents that changed everything. The IV stand I corrected on day 1. The lamp I asked for on day 2. The mirror I cleaned. The notebooks I filled. I don't know what staying means, I say honestly. I don't know the rules of how I got here or how long I have here. But I know that I came into this room and found something worth staying for. He looks at me. "You came to solve a case," he says. "Yes," I say. And somewhere in the middle of solving it, I stopped caring about the exit. He is quiet for a long moment. Then he reaches into the side drawer of his nightstand and removes an envelope. It is sealed. It is addressed to no one. It has Jasper Wren's handwriting on the outside. "The nurse who found this in estate records brought it to me this morning," he says. "It was flagged as undelivered internal mail from 14 months ago." My hands go still. I open it. Inside is a single page. Jasper's handwriting, neat and careful and frightened. A formal report to the estate medical director documenting a pattern of unauthorized medication access, irregular prescription logs, and the specific concern that the Alpha King's treatment plan had been altered without his knowledge or consent. It is dated 14 months ago. It was never filed. Jasper tried to report it properly, through the right channels, using the right words, and the right channels were controlled by the same people he was trying to report. He knew. He tried. And then they reassigned him to overflow duty and waited for a natural opportunity to replace him. And nobody asked any questions about what happened to the fat Omega nurse who had been quietly watching too closely. Damien watches me read it. He does not say anything for a long moment. Then, "He started the work before you got here." "Yes," I say. "He did." I fold the letter carefully and put it in my kit. It is the most important piece of evidence in the room. Not legally. Personally. Because whatever I am, whatever this transmigration was or means or becomes, Jasper Wren deserves to be remembered as the person who saw the truth first and tried to say so. And I will not let this estate bury him a second time. Damien offers me a place beside him. Not a title, not a role. He uses the word equal with the ease of a man who has been thinking about the right word for a while and settled on that one. I tell him I'm going to need a better chair. He almost smiles. Outside, the sirens have stopped. The estate is quiet in the way of a place that has just been put down and has not yet decided what to become next. I look at the arrest documents spread across the end of the bed. Caspian, Rowe, Dr. Marsh, Frederick Gale's cooperating witness paperwork, the board resolution granting Damien immediate reinstatement. Every name accounted for. Almost. I flip to the final page of the authority report, the initial incident documentation from the night of Damien's accident. The first sign-off. The physician who was first on scene and submitted the original assessment that framed everything that followed as accident-related neurological damage. The name on that document is listed as Dr. Conrad Vell, assigned from the Capital Medical Authority, certified by the Regional Board. I run the name through the estate records. There is no Dr. Conrad Vell registered with the Regional Board. There is no Dr. Conrad Vell in the Capital Medical Authority directory. There is no record of this person existing in any verified system prior to the night of Damien's accident. And there is no record of him after it either. I close the file. I look at Damien. He is watching me with the attention of a man who has learned to read my face over 30 days and knows when I have found something. "What is it?" he says. "The physician who signed the original accident report," I say. "He doesn't exist." Damien goes very still, which means someone went to the trouble of fabricating a medical identity specifically for the night of the accident, which means the accident itself was not the beginning of the plan. It was the plan. And the architect of that first piece is not in any of the arrest documents. This story is not over. It is just getting its breath back. If you made it to the end of this story, you already know that justice does not always come fast. But when it is built right, it holds. Share this with someone who needs to hear that the person everyone underestimated is often the only one telling the truth. Subscribe to this channel and turn on your notifications so you never miss a story that challenges the way you see the world. Drop a comment below and tell me, what was the moment in this story that hit you the hardest? Because every comment you leave is a reminder to someone else that they are not watching alone. Jasper saw it first. He tried, and in the end, the truth found its way to the light through a body nobody thought was worth a second look. That is not a small thing. That is everything. The end. Thank you for watching this story to the end. If you enjoyed this story, you will surely love the next one. So kindly subscribe and do check it out. The next story drops soon.